This is the most simple sourdough guide for beginners so that you can start baking bread at home and you will never have to buy bread again. Sourdough lingo seems super complicated of what is discard, when is it active, when is the best time to use my starter to make bread. There's so many questions out there, so I'm just gonna go ahead and simplify it for you and answer all those questions so that you can start baking today. This video is timestamped, so you can jump ahead to exactly what you need to know when it comes to your sourdough starter. Starting out with our sourdough one-on-one guide is what is a starter. So a sourdough starter is a main ingredient in sourdough bread. It is an even ratio of water, starter, and unbleached all-purpose flour. Where do you get your starter? For this video, we're just talking about if you already have a sourdough starter, you got discard from somebody else, or you can even get a starter from your local markets, or even look on Facebook groups or people in your area that either sell it or will be willing to give it to you for free. I highly recommend starting there because I killed 6 starters, and that's okay. Like, as you learn to make sourdough bread, you're not gonna be perfect at it, but I'm gonna give you the tips to make yours be maintained well and to keep it alive, and so that you can use it year after year. What do you need when it comes to making sourdough? Honestly, you don't need to have a lot of fancy equipment. You don't need a KitchenAid, you don't need a fancy mixer. You really just need your hands, a food scale, and unbleached all-purpose flour, a jar. That's it. Also, if you have any questions as I'm teaching you the basics of sourdough, please put them in the comments below. I'll be happy to help you. You have to feed your starter. It's kind of like a pet, and you need to feed it not every day unless you are going to bake a lot. So otherwise you will have a ton of sourdough starter that will probably get wasted, or you're gonna have a bakery's worth of starter. So once you get used to it, you'll see how much you actually need to have. To start out, just to make it simple, when you're feeding your starter, you're gonna start out with zeroing out your jar, 100 grams of your starter, grams of the all-purpose unbleached flour, and 100 grams of lukewarm water. What I do is I put it on the stove for just a minute just to warm it up. And you don't want it to be too hot because then you can kill your starter that way. And you don't want it to be like an unfiltered water. You want it to be a good water. How do I know if the temperature is right? So basically, if you're able to put your finger in and the water temperature is good, you know, it wouldn't, I've heard people say it wouldn't burn your baby if you put them in a bath with it. If it's where you can put your finger in and it doesn't hurt, it's just a little warm, that is the perfect temperature. Then you're gonna mix it all up with a spoon and make sure there's no flour that's not mixed in. You wanna make sure there's no lumps or clumps in there, and then scrape down the sides to make it all even on the bottom. Then once you get it all mixed up, you can place it on your counter and draw your start line so you can see where it is at, and then lightly place the lid on top. Do not seal it, and then it will be a nice warm spot on the countertop. This is what it looks like when it's doubled, and then when it exceeds that, it is healthy and active. How often do I need to feed my starter? Feed it minimum of once a week. Now, that is if you are going to feed your starter and you're not going to be baking that week. You just put it, you feed it, you let it rise for about 12 hours. You see that it rises, and that when it goes to its peak, that when it goes to the top of the jar, or 2 to 3 times where your start line is. So if it doubles the start line, or if it exceeds the start line at the very top, that is when it's called its peak. Now, when it comes back down, that is when it becomes discard because it's no longer active and bubbly. Active sourdough starter is thick and bubbly. That is when it's healthy, and that's when you want to use it the most. Now, when it comes to storing it, you want to store it after it has deflated. And then you could put the sealed jar on and put it into your fridge. To rise, you're just going to place the lid lightly on top like this, and then you could store that on your counter for no more than 24 hours. I'd say 12 to 24 hours. But once it's past the 24-hour mark, you can get mold in there, and you definitely don't want that. So don't use that. If you have once it's down to discard, just go ahead and put it in your fridge. Put a sticky label on it, and you'll know when you need to feed it. If If you're having a hard time with your starter and it's not rising, I suggest looking at the temperature in your home. If your home is really cold, then it's going to prevent it from rising, where you can use it as active sourdough in making a good sourdough loaf. A trick that I do is place it into my oven with the oven off and just put the light on so it is a warm spot for it to rise. If you're not sure if your sourdough is active or not, you can put it through a float test. Now this float test will, once you put the sourdough starter, a very small amount of it, into a bowl of water, if it does not float, it is not ready for an active sourdough starter. Active sourdough bread recipe might mean that you need it to grow a little bit longer before you use it. And if it already started to deflate and it still doesn't float, I would suggest checking the boxes that it has in a warm place. Make it healthy. I suggest keeping your schedule really easy. At 8 a.m. you're going to feed it, and then at 8 p.m. So it's really easy, twice a day, so that you can get that starter active and bubbly and ready for the next time you want to bake. The perfect thing about sourdough is you don't have to bake every day with it to use your sourdough. It's really good to use on your schedule. So what I do is the recipes are overnight rise. So while it's fermenting overnight, I know that my schedule is at noon the day before I want the bread to be ready. I feed my starter at noon. I knead the bread at 5 or around 8 o'clock. I let that rise so that by 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. I can cut my dough and let it rise one more time before I put it in the oven to make a loaf. It just depends on the recipe that you're using, but just being strategic about when you want to bake and what your schedule looks like. Basically 1 to 2 days if you're going to be home. It seems like a lot at first, but you can play with it a little bit and see what schedule works out with you best, of the best time to feed your starter and the best time to start baking. Another good thing is if it already deflated and you weren't able to use your active sourdough starter, it does not have to go to waste. There are plenty of sourdough discard recipes. One of my favorite is sourdough waffles, and I will link that in the description box. I make this once a week and you will absolutely love them. And that is also a very simple recipe to start out with. If you're not making bread, you don't just have to use sourdough for bread. It's easy to digest, so why don't you just put in almost all your recipes. I put it in chocolate chip cookies and it makes it so much better. Okay, that might seem like the most intense sourdough 101 that you have received, but it is a video that you can reference over and over again of what you need to do when it comes to maintaining your sourdough starter and making bread for your family. You will absolutely love it, and it just seems so new, so you're just getting your hands in the rhythm of it and being able to make sourdough for your family. Again, I wrecked 6 starters. I had to just not give up though, and now I've gotten the flow of it. So don't give up, keep going, and you're gonna enjoy making bread for your family. Thanks for watching today's video. I'll see you guys in the next one.